Okay, yes. And it's 4:15. I'll call the Parks and Recreation Committee to order.
Okay, item 3, welcome and introduction of acknowledgement of the guests. Have anybody here today? Roll call, please.
For Public Works, Husheng,
Here?
Barb. Here. Tom.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Right.
Here.
For Parks and Recreation, Barb. Here. Nate is absent, Katrina is absent, Dino.
Yep.
And Roger.
Here.
So no public comment. Item 5, approve of 7/11/22 Public Work and Utility Committee minutes. Accept the motion on that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Question. Item 10 on the minutes. On line 7. Cost is $22.75. You have a comment in there
Oh, okay.
instead of apostrophe.
Oh, okay.
And then total cost is for 29 of them, $659.75. It is 6,000 something.
All right, number, okay, yep,
So that has to be
we'll
corrected
correct
also.
those, yep. We'll make sure the math works out there.
All right, with those addition to it, please, those correction. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I have it. Thank you. Acknowledgement work product transmittal. Item 6, acknowledgement of sewer and water permit.
All of these addresses are part of the Hinner Springs new subdivision. Not all of them have laterals done yet, but they've been submitted, so some of them are paid, some of them are not yet.
So Steve, you want to approve it or acknowledge it?
Just acknowledge.
I move to acknowledge.
Second,
Second.
all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, I have it. So that be for item 8602 to 8503. Correct?
Yep.
Item referred to the committee by the village board, none. Educational presentation and report, none. Resolution and ordinance. Request to update ATV/UTV. Ordinance to open additional street in the village of Weston. Item 7.
So, the March meeting, the Public Works, Utility had approved some additional streets on, Shore Ave and Ryan Street for ATV, UTV use. At that point, staff was asked to work with the, ATV club on, coming up with a more comprehensive list, so we weren't kind of constantly taking one street at a time. So we met with the Rural Riders Club here and, went through, kind of highlighted part of the village that they thought, would make sense, and as well as also locations where their club members currently reside as well. There's a desire to try to minimize the amount of trailering that many of these people would have to do to get to an open road or open trail. I shared this map also with Chief Schultz and Captain Aldridge and Rusnick with Everest Metro. The only real concern currently is, I don't know how to star this, but, right now, there's no good way to get in between, Old Costa Lane here and Teagan Lane. There is an existing trail there, but doesn't appear to actually be on Village of Weston property. So I know Keith was gonna follow up with the individual who owns that, land to see if they would be okay with having that be part of the ATV, UTV trails. I guess we'd probably have, some neighbors in that area to follow up with as well to make sure they'd be okay with, those types of vehicles traversing through there. But Chief Schultz wasn't a big fan of having ATVs on Schofield Ave here, with the Old Costa Lane, Fuller Street, and then Teagan intersections all coming in that about quarter mile stretch. So
I think he's right, though, I agree with him,
Yeah.
because the Schofield Avenue, even Ross Avenue is the same way, and Fuller Street is the same way. These are very busy roads, and they should stay off of it.
yeah, so the current thought is, if we said, kind of the Teagan Lane and east, and then those roads south of the highway. I probably opened the one other caveat the club said was if we wanted to restrict the use of Weston Avenue itself and just made it so you could kind of cross the road but not go up and down, if they would be okay with that, primarily from X to Ryan. And, because you have Huron and Shore you can use instead. So, I guess just looking for any feedback you may have. But I guess that's kind of where I would be leaning towards right now, as well as, if I can draw.
So they crossing Ross Avenue at one place, is that it? Am I reading it right?
There's nothing on Ross Avenue. This is all south of there. It's primarily south of Schofield Ave and east of Camp Phillips. But if we're not gonna open up that other area where, like the Crestwood Acres subdivision is, or, across the street here, since there's no way to get east from there without using Schofield Ave, we kind of just stop it at, Old Costa Road, or not Old Costa, Teagan Lane in east, and then south of the highway, east of X.
So where you were highlighting that before, it's hard to see on here, but there is a trail through there, or it's,
There's like a walking path through there, people, get their bikes and stuff through there.
Yeah, you would have, I think, neighbors in there up in arms.
Yeah.
But that is used by bikes and walkers a lot. And
Yeah.
it's not that wide, it's just,
Yeah, it's a pretty narrow path, but it's not even village property at the moment, so.
Right.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't control, I did leave a message with the developer on that. Haven't gotten any word back, and we could also get the ATV, UTV club in touch with them, and see if they wanna get some arrangement there, but, it is not our, call, I guess, on whether that's used for that purpose. I think it would be tough with the weights placed in there, there's houses on both sides, I think on either side of that drainage way as well.
I don't have a concern on legal liability for whoever that property owner is anyway. I mean, if he doesn't realize that, I would strongly be against that. Should either be village owned, or I don't think it should even be considered.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
One thing I have to comment is I laugh now that one neighbor's down in that new subdivision off of Callan there. They should be happy because they were mad because they couldn't get, it's right at my road there on Willard, and
Yeah.
they said, well, how come you guys, and I said, hey, I didn't do this. I didn't agree to have it past my house. Now I can get to not recycling the yard waste site from my house with my UTV.
Okay, what's your wishes?
I'm going to recommend the village board approve opening additional roads for ATV, UTV use in the village of Weston as shown on the proposed route map.
Excluding the streets west of,
Including this, do we have to, is it in yellow, do you want to say?
well, I guess everything's in yellow. I guess I could probably maybe
Excluding the streets
west of,
west of,
including Old Costa Lane and west or something like that.
including Old Costa Lane and west of it. You need to say south of.
North of 29 and west of Old Costa.
North of 29, west of Old Costa.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
Question? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I have it, thank you. The staff report, item A8, CIP update.
Yeah, so with the bill or the bipartisan infrastructure law, we had submitted 3 STP urban grants in June. We got rankings back last month or last week, I should say. Our joint project with the city of Schofield for Ross Ave from Metro Drive to Alderson Street was ranked number 1. Our project with the town of Weston on Ross Ave from Riverbend to Paul's was ranked number 3. And the reconstruction of Schofield Ave from Normandy to Birch was ranked number 4. There's a MPO meeting tomorrow to kind of go over funding levels and possibly which of those projects, but at this point, I'd say the Ross Ave project with Schofield is probably getting funded, at least at a 70% level or thereabouts, and we'll have to see, I guess, about the other 2 as far as if there's enough money allocated this round. So.
Are you going to that meeting or Keith, you going to that?
We'll probably be virtually.
But, I mean, we did have 3 of the top 4 projects, so I don't think it's a matter of if we get funding, it's just which project and how much will be allocated. We also received a TAP grant for a planning study for bicycle and pedestrian master plan, that further on the agenda. That is an 80-20 grant. The Crestwood project, by all accounts, is complete. We're just waiting for the final pay application so the special assessments can get calculated. Birch Street project, all the water and sewer main are in. Currently working on the storm sewer north of Leyburn and getting the street rebuilt as they move with that project. So some of the curbing went in last week on the west side of the project, and possibly next week they'll get the curbing on the east side of that done. The asphalt path was also paved from Camp Phillips Road, west on Shorey Ave, and then north up to about Leyburn as well, so.
Just a question.
Yep.
On that bicycle master plan. Are you hiring, bidding that project or?
We will have to, yeah. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, the Birch Street project's on schedule to be finished by middle of September there. I guess the Weston Avenue X to J, I did send out an email, I believe it was on Friday. We received the 60% plans for the west phase as well last week, so we currently have the 60% plans for the east and west phase in hand. We had a meeting with the DNR about the wetland disturbance, primarily from about Progress Way to J. We'll have a follow-up meeting with them. So that's later this week. Kind of go over the stormwater, kind of how the stormwater and wetlands interact with each other on that. Because to achieve stormwater quality, there's a greater wetland disturbance. So it's trying to figure out what is the right balance, I guess, in between some of that. Yes, the Alderson to Birch project, that design with MSA was approved last month. And they'll be getting the survey and wetland delineation work done this month. It's the first step of that final design process. Northwestern Avenue, we did get the final plans and specs into the states by the August 1 deadline, so that project will be programmed to go out for bid this fall as part of the DOT bid packages for a 2023 repaving. On that one, we do have a grant up to $555,695 secured. And nothing really new on that Ross Ave and County Road X intersection. Just that the highway commissioner is putting out an RFP for design services on that intersection improvement. I guess public safety building, the bid packet for the exterior upgrades is out for bid, and then for our municipal center building, there is a bid package out for a revised salt structure, currently out for bid as well. For well 7 and 8, Ellis will be mobilizing into the site this month. The Ryan Street Apache, kind of still a struggle with getting the site restoration completed. There's been 3 attempts out there by landscapers, and there'll be a 4th attempt coming up here. So that one's just been a bit of a struggle. We'll make sure we get that one taken care of. The temporary PFAS treatment, Josh and Dan have been working with our staff, kind of going through the logistics of how we're going to get the vessels in the building. We did hear from them last week that they've been delayed about 2 weeks, so we should be getting those around later in the week of the 15th or early in the week of the 22nd, and we'll get the treatment system plumbed in and up and running as soon as possible there.
Service was saying this morning that our government come up with the limit for PFAS and is lower than the state. You
The
hear about it?
EPA came up with a health advisory standard on PFAS that was below detection limits of any testing equipment right now. So they're essentially saying any PFAS is that, you should limit your exposure.
So there should be-
Wisconsin's now officially adopted the enforcement standard of 20 parts per trillion. I'm sorry, it was 70 parts per trillion. It was the standard that was under consideration prior to the DNR, Natural Resources Board hearing back in February. But you have health advisory limits, and then you have still no safe drinking water standard federally. Wisconsin now has a standard at 70 parts per trillion, but that's an enforcement standard right now. But anything lower is health advisory levels. So it's still a very confusing situation to everybody. It's confusing enough to us, let alone like the public. So,
We don't have to follow EPA, we just follow Wisconsin.
so EPA again doesn't have a standard yet.
All right,
The treatment facility would essentially get it, so it's non-detect. So it would be meeting the most stringent recommendations out there.
Which is good.
Yeah.
so those vessels cannot get in the building to knock the wall out?
We have to take the wall out and get a door put in.
Yep.
So there's just some, a heater and some other electrical stuff that needs to get moved.
But does it fit inside the building?
If it's inside the building, yeah, that building was designed for granular activated carbon vessels.
Correct.
So unfortunately, they weren't installed, because if they were installed, we wouldn't have this issue, because that's how we would treat our PFAS, is with the granular activated carbon, and, we'd be fine, but for whatever reason, back in the 80s, it was decided not to install those vessels. But the building was designed to handle those in the future, so. So the space is there inside the building, we just need to knock out the wall and put it more.
So I think the reason they're not in there is just that the treatment facility was built with the anticipation that there was gonna be treatment needed someday. I think it was at that same time, there was a remediation effort going on with this gas station across the street. That remediation system went in place and it cleaned up the situation so that
Right.
treatment was never added over at that facility. So the good news is though, we have the space provided for in there. There's no additional structure needed. There are some piping changes and things and changes in the wall, I guess, would be the other thing.
Kind of like the garage with trucks.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
The part you're gonna knock it down, you're gonna put the door in there or
Yeah, it was built originally with, removable panels.
knock out the wall?
Yeah,
Okay. Anything else?
no, just,
Question? All right. Street operation update?
Yep, summer's going by too quick. That's all I can say. But as you see here, we're doing pretty much most of the routine, some sweeping, mowing, patching. Inlets have started to sprout now. When we had 3 inches of rain here several weeks ago. Weston had more than what I had in Chronowater, and we're finding some inlets now are starting to show up where they must have, they're bad around the pipes and the curb inlets, you know, so we're running into some of them. Shorey Avenue was paved today. RC Pavers was out there from Alderson to Birch Street, so that's done. The next thing they're gonna tackle will be, I think Kramer Lane's they're gonna pulverize that. So we ended up doing work for that, like Shorey, we ended up raising manholes and water valves and stuff. So the other thing we're,
The Shorey Avenue, some area, I think it was too soft. They dig it out or they just pave it or no?
when you say too soft, meaning what? We should.
The pavement wasn't looking good. It means those spot wasn't area, that area wasn't good. So
What we did, if you back up on the picture, you'll see, we purchased a 2-foot milling head for on a skid steer this year. We got the track skid steer. So what the guys did first is they went out there in those areas where it was soft, milled that out, and we've got the hot box patch trailer, which is nice. In fact, we've got hot mix sitting in it right now that we're gonna use tomorrow morning. So they went out there and they addressed the areas where there was a lot of cold patch in, milled that out, put hot mix in, rolled it, raised the manholes and the water valves up. So we're gonna continue working on that. Actually, the city of Wausau is borrowing us a piece of equipment that goes on the front of the skid steer so we can mill out longer stretches, drop the asphalt, and it's got movable wings on it so we can take and screed it off. It works really great. We've got a new roller this year. So the goal is now, we're getting ahead of the paving portions, contracted paving like Shorey, Winding Ridge Way. They fixed that up a little bit. That's gonna get overlaid, and then Kramer will get pulverized and overlaid. But now what we're gonna do is start on like Jelnik, out on Commerce. There's areas where the asphalt's raveling, so we'll take the skid steer, mill it, then take in hot mix, put it back in, roll it. So we're eliminating those soft spots, and it's something we don't have to patch then down the line, more of a permanent patch for us. It's cost effective when you look at it versus having to go and use cold patch that doesn't hold up. So works pretty good. Doing some curb replacements too out in the industrial park. There's some areas, Fabiano Brothers commercial entrances where the curbs were shot. We're gonna do a pour tomorrow, finish the other half of that. That's a picture over on Eau Claire Avenue. So if you drive down there, you'll see where there were areas that it was, you know, the asphalt was deteriorated, so they mill it out 2 inches, put mix in it. We've got something that'll hold up for a lot longer. So our goal is to try and keep up with that, get as much asphalt work as we can done now while it's warm. Also, we're got a painter, we're gonna be borrowing a spray painter for doing crosswalks and stuff from the village of Croninwater. We've worked out a deal with them. They're gonna borrow it to us, so we're gonna start trying to get after some of the crosswalk painting and stuff that needs some attention. So we're just gonna try and get as much done as we can before the weather changes, you know, that's kind of where we're after right now. So things are going pretty good. Contract wise, we cleaned up the trees over there by the municipal center, the windfalls that were there, those are all taken care of and gone. And when it comes to the contract stuff, hopefully either tomorrow or Wednesday, Farner's coming back to work on the Eau Claire River Bridge where the low spout areas were. They're gonna epoxy those in and try and level that up. Then I've got Portage County's gonna come and paint Ross Avenue. We've got several streets that need painting. Portage County does long line painting. They do it for the state, they do it for themselves. We had them paint Schofield Avenue out here, and it's a considerable savings. So they're gonna come and do the painting. That's why Ross Avenue hasn't been striped yet. I'm waiting till they get the bridge epoxy, then we can come in and paint everything and get it all done. So that's kind of the goal where we're at with that. On Community Center Drive, that was a two-phase project. Pembroke Construction finished up their work last week. So they did all the curb repair, inlet repairs. Next thing is American Asphalt's gonna come in, and they've hired Merrill Sand and Gravel. The last week in August, they're planning on starting on Community Center Drive. They're gonna do the manhole and water valve adjustments. When they get done with that, then they're gonna mill the whole thing, and then American's gonna pave it. So it'll be brand new asphalt from Birch Street all the way to the concrete on County Highway X. And then RC Pavers, yeah, they've got Kramer Lane yet to do and Winding Ridge Way. And after that, that'll kind of be winding up most of our contract stuff for this year.
Yes, Mr.
I just got a quick question, Dan. So when they do the striping on Ross, will they also identify the bike lanes on both sides?
Center lane, double.
Some of those are just gone now, okay.
No, what they're gonna do is they're just doing the long line. We hope to do the special stuff, and that's what happens when you do a paint contract. The long line stuff is pretty cheap. When you pay somebody to come in.
They're
And
only doing the center lane, that's it?
center,
Fog line that, and then you're gonna take care of whatever else you need.
yeah, those, what do they call
The bike symbols we'll take care of.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah,
they've got a
but
name
that
for
white
those.
line where you can walk or bike in the.
And the yellow,
That's an
under the yellow and the white lines.
They will pay that too.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Then my second question, if you don't mind, is, so Commerce is done and East Everest is done. Really nice, right behind Quick Trip, am I not saying the road right?
Community center.
Community center?
Well, it's
Oh,
East
those are both-
Everest there, but
okay.
yeah.
So what about that washboard? And I know it's county road. It's about 300 feet. It's horrible. And I mean, we're all driving on it constantly. And I mean, is there a plan or can we at least blacktop those?
I
holes?
talked to Jim Griesbach like
Yeah.
right at 4 o'clock, cause I had a question for their
Yeah.
finance person. We can ask them again. I know the joints need to be.
I mean, if they're not gonna get done until next year, we've gotta go and blacktop them. I mean, because it's been this whole year.
How about we try calling them again?
How about give some relief to the community? And I mean, I know it's our dollar, it shouldn't be our dollar, but yet we're all on it. I get a lot of people questioning that, and I know it's county, but my God, they gotta get that done. That's horrible. They did a heck of a job down on Schofield Avenue, and I know it's a Band-Aid. I remember talking to Keith about it, and it's a 5-year Band-Aid, but at least it's a heck of a lot nicer than it was.
Those were done like more than that, about 7 years. When I was there yet, that's when we milled those out, Norcon milled those joints, so we can put another call into them and see if they can get her done.
I appreciate it.
I know,
Stretches,
I think Michael already talked to him once, but
I bugged him about a month ago.
yeah.
You gotta.
is that the county or the
Gotta
DOT?
Pizzas or.
That's a county.
Beer or something.
How come he didn't do it when he did the first stretch? He should just continue doing it. And I agree with Mark.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I agree.
Yeah, I think they've got a long-term plan down the line for fixing that whole thing, because the inlets need some work too. They're settling by the inlets. They've got storm sewer issues going on too. But that, for our work on our roads,
Yeah, but that is our road.
no, it is not. That
Yeah,
is
but
Maritime County.
Dan, it's my road. I'm on that goddamn road every single day, a couple times, along with everybody else that has to travel.
So do I.
And it's a washboard. I know, it's not funny. It's not funny. I think my truck's gonna fall apart right there. And then I'll go after the county, but I mean, I'm just saying, there should be some relief and,
Okay,
a little bit of patching ain't gonna kill us.
we'll lean on it. I'm not laughing at you, Mark.
I
I'm
know,
just saying
I know,
it's-
but I get the phone calls, so I'm sure you do too.
Yep.
Any question for Dan? All right, thank you. Item 10, the operation update.
Yeah, on the water side, we had a number of miscellaneous well repairs there, some leaks at a few of the wells. Mike has kind of touched on where we're at with our PFAS temporary treatment. Had our meeting with the utility guys, we'll be getting over that way. A few things we need to take a peek at to relocate. We have overhead fill that we need to get an idea of where we can relocate that. you know, like Mike mentioned, we'll be working with Dan here, we'll be cutting that open, hopefully. We gotta have a few other things in place to make sure we can close the hole once we get it open, so we'll be getting together and, tackling that this weekend and next. Just a couple miscellaneous tower issues with some power, backup power items. We had one valve replacement we ended up taking care of over, in Rothschild at Bryan and Marlin. Did a few, hydrant extensions, assisted on some of the Birch Street project material deliveries as well. On our sewer side, number of miscellaneous, repairs as well. We had a pump that got back to us that was out for repair. We were able to reinstall that over at, Mesker Jelnik lift station. We had some time, we've been, working with Rib Mountain Metro. They've been seeing some pH spikes at one of their, metering stations. So we had kind of identified who. So we've been working with Wassa Tile. They've had some issues with some overflows and some different things that they've been doing. So kind of been working with them to keep getting us some data on what they're using and.
What is the spike? How much is the pH over?
Well, they see kind of a pH spike and they have a metering station that kind of is right outside of Wassa Tile, where that's kind of our final number from that metering station. And then they would have a big flow spike. So we're trying to figure out, you know, the only thing that can really contribute that much of a pH spike we felt was Wassa Tile, because everything else is, I mean, miles upstream from that metering station. So they had found that there was a plug, something had gotten plugged and it had overflowed, and it happened to be a manhole that was sitting there that flowed out to it. So they put some different items in place, some other floats. And, you know, I think now that they know that we're watching and Rib Mountain Metro is watching, that I think they've been, Rib Mountain Metro has been sending me all their data. Basically, I get it a day late from when they get the results, so they haven't had any pH spikes since. There was kind of a couple hits early in the year, so we were able to finally pinpoint where it was coming from, so they haven't had anything outside of what the ordinance is supposed to be, so they've been staying in line at this point. And we actually wanna kind of follow what Rib Mountain Metro had installed, so we can kind of see some different spots of where our pH is before it ultimately hits the Rib Mountain Metro metering station as well. So it's something we'll continue to monitor, but they've nothing bad since probably, I think, May was the last one they had, so.
So, but still, we don't know what's the spike. I mean, how much was the pH higher?
I mean, it was up in the 9s. I don't know if it got up into the 10s. So it was higher than we want to see, and, you know, we ultimately told them that, you know, we could plug the manhole and then you guys would have to figure out another spot to dispose of your waste. So they turned around pretty quick. They had some changeover in their operations as well. They had a new environmental manager get on board, so he's been good to work with. He didn't know this was happening, so he was kind of green at figuring out what was going on too. So trying to work together with them to make sure we fall in line. Other than that, we've had, basically every day we've had 2 operators out doing some sewer jetting. I guess if anyone gets calls, we do have a few instances where it can kind of gurgle up some people's toilets and stuff if it's some venting issues potentially in the home. So we had one home where it kind of had the water in the toilet blow out, but, you know, we try to offer any assistance if we can. So it's tough to notify where we're gonna be because it's hard to determine how bad certain stretches are gonna be once you get to it. The guys spent most of the day on a couple stretches today because it was just not cleaning up for them. So it's hard to notify everybody where we're gonna be, and but we're continuing on getting, I think we're halfway through the year's jetting, so hopefully we can keep her going and wrap it up quickly. Nothing really to report. SCADA, we're still kind of waiting on a couple items. Diggers as usual, there's always a lot of diggers tickets that our guys are out doing on a daily basis, along with work orders. A lot of meter installs and communication stuff, lateral inspections. I guess in the miscellaneous activities, it's kind of just filled with our PFAS. You can kind of see the timelines of items that we've been hitting here in the last couple months. And then some of the contract items, Michael touched on most of it. One of them is, wanted to touch back on the Cedar Creek Interceptor project. I pulled that from the abyss, started reviewing some of the resident letters. Last week, I didn't get a chance to get them out. Hopefully we'll get them out this week so we can get that thing back on track. Our mobile home parks, I reviewed the 90% plan. We should have something agreed upon and ready to put out for advertising here soon at the 3 mobile home parks we have. Our Tanya Patricia lift station, I believe got paved. I didn't get a chance to get out there to see if Tanya Patricia was paved. But that lift station project should just really have some final restoration, and I think it should be good. We're waiting on a generator. So we have a temporary powers that was existing that we kept in place there, so we can pull one of our pull behind generators over there if need be until we get our permanent generator installed. I guess other projects, our hydrant painting was awarded Ferguson, should be taking place in September. I'm gonna follow up on them, get them a final number. Our manhole rehabs, I gotta touch base again with Visu Sewer. They should be here this month. Our sewer lining, had more conversations with MyTech last week. There was a couple of questions I had. They needed to update a few things, so we should have that. And we should have it awarded, or we should have a recommendation at the next meeting to award that. And other than that, we have our customers added, our water pump for the last handful of months. You'll notice the yellow, that's our Mesker and Sternberg wells. So Mesker's been off the last couple months, Sternberg full month last month, didn't pump anything to the distribution system. Then we just have our lift station operation hours and wastewater flows and our Aquahawk data.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
How are you coming with that easement for Cedar Creek?
Gonna get the letters out and revisit. I know we had a few people, a couple of residents that sign off. But that's when the property had changed hands that we were looking at to Szewinski. Anyways, the property had changed hands, so we're gonna resend them out, get together and hopefully by the next meeting, we'll either have something signed, at least an update of what the next step's gonna be. And I gotta follow up with Steph over at MyTech as well.
Question? All right, Mark?
Just listening to you and we're going along here. Now we have parks update.
I do have a report in the packet, touches on some of our daily activities and some of the larger projects that we're working on. I believe I mentioned in there, we actually started on the fencing removal at Kennedy Park today. We got to wrap up our portion as far as removing fence and posts. Security fence scheduled to come in next week. We also met with them today, go over details just because the person in charge of the project switched from when it was quoted, so he wanted to go over things. We also met with youth baseball out there too, just going over what the changes are gonna be and how long it'll be. Basically, they're not gonna be usable at this point with no backstops, but they run their fall baseball this fall. They should be ready to roll. You know, it shouldn't take them more than a week or so to do that. Baseball's also proposing to possibly do some additional fencing upgrades out there. So they requested a couple quotes today, which they'll be discussing at their upcoming board meeting, as far as some other fencing upgrades, improvements at Kennedy too. So, and then the other thing I probably didn't touch on was our seasonal employees here are starting to drop off already as far as the parks ones. So We have one that's part-time this week, and then we have another one that's, working most of the days this week, but, you know, transitioning to both of them are, one's got a full-time teaching job and the other one will be also student teaching this year, so, they're getting classrooms set up and getting ready to head off for that, so, so it's gonna be short-lived and then we'll be on our own. But we are down to just under 2 weeks left at the aquatic center. So our season ends on August 21st. And then, you know, then we'll be winterizing and draining that and all that. And I did touch on the leak at the aquatic center. I was struggling with getting American testing over here, so I contacted Newman Pools and now they're working on trying to get somebody up here. Because they really would like to have somebody come on site before we like totally winterize the facility, just in case we need to add water to it again for them to test it. So, and then we'll get an estimate and hopefully we can get it repaired off season. So.
Okay, any questions? Sean?
No.
And policy discussions and recommendations, I assume this is part?
Well, this is actually both. It's both, but it's Michael had submitted a grant, and he touched on it earlier in the meeting. That's a TAP grant.
Right.
And it's to cover bicycle and pedestrian master plan for the village. Got the actual award last week, right? Correct. And then now it's up to us to go through the process to draft and send out a bid packet for it, correct? Because it is a.
Yeah, we'll have to send out a proposal for, I guess, the planning consultant to do the work for us, so.
Yeah.
And has to follow the DOT process and, but I guess step one is we need to accept the grant award, which is the state municipal agreement saying that we will do the project and, follow through on it. And they will then reimburse us for our costs.
Questions on that?
How much was the award?
It was, the estimated project cost was 60,000, so it's, 48,000 from the state, federal government, and then 12,000 would still be the village's share.
Item 13, I believe would be parts.
There a recommendation to,
Accept that.
accept it?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
I move that we accept that. I'll second.
Motion, Bettino?
Yep.
Second by Roger. On the question? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, now item 13, update agreement with YMCA for aquatic center management.
So, as you probably all know, I mean, this was our third season, third final year of the current agreement with the YMCA as far as managing the aquatic center. I did put a copy of the updated proposed agreement along with the current agreement. One thing I didn't note in there that initially when we signed the agreement with them in 2020, it was 30,000 for the first year along with $5,000 incentive just due to the first initial startup of it. And they had accidentally wrote in the agreement that it was 30,000 a year for the term, and the term of the agreement was 3 years. Then a paragraph lower, it said that the price was going to increase 2% each year. So they stuck with where it said that during the term of 3 years, it was 30,000 a year. So they never increased the rate for the past 3 seasons. It was supposed to jump up 2% each year. Then it would have been, it was 31,200 by this season. Then next year, if it was additional 2%, it was going to be 31,800. So as you see, there is a price increase on it though. They increased it to 31,500 per year with no increase each year. It's just a 31,500. So I mean, that's probably the financial side of what you want to see as far as the agreement. I did go through the agreement because they did kind of simplify some things, also remove some things. We had some COVID stuff in there. We had the proposed opening plan, and it was really more detailed because we didn't know how the two were gonna function together. So when they redrafted the agreement, they're like, well, both entities kind of know what they're doing at this point as far as what part of the operation. So if you don't see any issues with any of the changes, we would recommend approving it.
I still move we accept it. I'll second that.
Who made the second? On the question, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Capital improvement plan discussion, Kennedy Park buildings.
So I got a pretty lengthy RFC in there as far as the buildings at Kennedy Park. I know there's been some discussion, obviously, pre the construction of the new municipal center, as far as, you know, like Parks Department staff, everything moving over to the new facility, which is the plan. And then we also had discussions earlier this year regarding Kennedy Park Hall, and as far as the use of that. So if you're not familiar, there's 3 facilities over there. There's the current warming house, the park shop, and then Kennedy Hall with our park offices in it, which is the white and green building. And then there's also a 4th building, which is the Alta Verde Well House, which is the gray roof right there. So I kind of broke them apart a little bit just due to the different types of use, but also future uses of those facilities. So as stated in there, I'll start with the warming house. The warming house has not been used the past 2 seasons. 2020 wasn't used due to COVID. 2021, couldn't find the staff to man it. So we just had outdoor rinks with lights on the timer and, some benches outside so people could use it through the season. We maintain them basically on a daily basis due to either usage or snow. We have to remove them, et cetera. So I put in the size of the warming house. I believe it was about 560 square feet. And the building has had a few upgrades done to it as far as like part of the roof was replaced, the exterior doors, but it had previously been in our old CIP plan as far as updating it. But with, construction of the new municipal center, et cetera, and then Parks Department moving from that site, is there a better alternative as far as the use of those buildings over there, or conversion or removal, whatever, et cetera. So, and I just touched base on some of the other things. So that is also the source of the power and control for the lights on the rinks. Also powers the big baseball field, electricity too. So, it's one of those things where if we decide to remove that building, then we're gonna have to move power and adjust where those things are controlled if you're still providing power for rink lights, et cetera. Next item is the park shop, which is the largest of the buildings there. Of course, it houses the park operations currently, stores most of the equipment, et cetera, trucks. And has a shop area, storage, obviously, and then we have a heated storage area where we store cleaning chemicals, stuff that can't freeze over winter. We also store some equipment in there over winter that can't freeze. And then we also store backup supplies for the aquatic center. Aquatic center, unfortunately, doesn't have storage capacity for backup toilet paper, paper towel, cleaning supplies. So that is all stored at that facility also. So one of the things that just brought this building into the discussion, thought about it, is that if we don't have a facility there for cleaning, for housing like the broom or the snow blower or the Zamboni, we will have to transport those items nearly every day from the other site. So does it make sense to leave it? It could be used for off-site storage from the main municipal center. But there are pieces of equipment that are used on a daily basis because we sweep the rinks, we snow blow the sidewalks at Kennedy, the front of the pool, et cetera. Zamboni, if we don't have a place to house it, it's probably best off to get rid of it because transporting that is not realistic. We move it twice a year from Ryan Street. We move it here, we move it back, and it's a pain because it's a large piece of equipment. So just some things to think about. We want to get this discussion started if there's a direction to go with it, so. No different than like a mower or a ball diamond machine or, I mean, we have 3 baseball fields at Kennedy, just thinking, does it make sense to have some equipment available for storage there or not? So just trying to get people thinking about it, not necessarily might need to make a decision tonight on this, but. And the final building is Kennedy Hall and the 2 park offices. This discussion regarding this building was something that we knew was coming back, talked about it the spring. We decided not to rent it out just because since 2020, the use of the building has changed. So it stopped being used for private rentals. We built 30 plexiglass dividers for the elections. Those were stored there. We store some other election stuff. Like the ice cream machine, slushy machine from the aquatic center stored there, so it doesn't freeze. We also store backup supplies, store our aquatic center, chemical pumps, et cetera, stuff that just can't freeze and we don't have a ton of heated storage. So, of course, with the new facility, some of this stuff can be stored there, obviously, and no different than us using it as a workspace, because we use it as a workspace for painting right now, refinishing tables, building hockey boards. So obviously, those uses don't have to continue there, but, what do we do with this building? I mean, the building's been there since 2005. It was moved there. It's the former drive-in theater building, if you're not familiar, from the corner of J and Schofield Avenue. Not the former drive-in, if anybody knows where it was by Target, where Target is now, but, so it was moved there in 2005, and reassembled, installed there, as a, upgrade for park offices, because our park office used to be in the corner of the shop. That was the heated storage area. And I think that's about what I mean, there's obviously, like I said, I wrote quite a bit in the RFC, but I really wanted people to start thinking about what the future of it is.
I mean, I'd almost add in the 4th building there too, the Alta Verde well house. That well house is in need of repair, and in our CIP, we've talked about having a treatment plant at the Bladel well, where the Alta Verde well house would pump to Bladel Street, and then everything would be treated at Bladel on site. So, that building in and of itself could likely be redone or eliminated to a certain extent. So I think all of those buildings kind of come into play as we look at what that corner looks like moving forward.
Go ahead.
Sean, so at one of the previous meetings, the baseball guys talked about the improvements to electricity that they want to make for at least the big field, but it might have been more than just the big field.
Right.
And you said that electricity is coming out of the warming house?
Currently, yep.
Okay, all right.
Yep. And they were talking about putting a service correct at the big field to upgrade that for lights on the batting cage and possibly future lights on the field.
Right, exactly.
And actually, as you bring up baseball has shown some interest in using Kennedy Park Hall. I had a brief discussion with the vice president last week. They may be interested in leasing that building because they don't have like their own site. So like baseball group wins trophies, they don't have like a place to have it because they're not part of the school or, somewhere where they could keep some of that stuff. So I guess just put that out there also, just that there might be another use for it. We initially had thought that if the warming house is going to be removed, that the 2 park offices, which is that north little section, it's 11.5 by 11 and 11 by 17. It's only 280 square feet, where that might have been an option to like move the warming house area into it, but it's half the size of it. And then you don't have direct access to the restrooms. We actually go outside the offices, go in the other part of the building, go to the restrooms. So yes, a hole could be gotten in the wall, but then you have this whole big hall area that's, susceptible to lots of people using it. Because we've seen our warming house get destroyed on the inside from skate marks and hockey pucks getting shot around and everything else. So,
Well, to me, it would make sense in a way to have a building where you could keep some of the park stuff that you use almost on a daily basis. Kind of like where you have it for the, out by Ryan there, where you have some of your equipment in that building because you're using it right there, which would make sense to keep something there that, I mean, that you're not driving back and forth just to.
Yeah, and well, actually, the Park Shop has a 200 amp panel, and there's a sub panel in the Warren House that feeds all the other stuff. So it's actually coming off the main service, which is on the Park Shop.
Right, so, yeah.
It's something that could be, if needed to be, it could be eliminated and just moved into the Park Shop if that's left there, because it is all inside a building then.
And, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Barb.
Well, I was just gonna say, because it, to me, your seasonal stuff that you're using, I mean, when it's off-season, it could more than likely be stored in the new municipal center, but then you would have the stuff you're using for ice rinks or whatever be in that. I mean, to me, to travel back and forth doesn't make a lot of sense. You gotta.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, like stuff like that, if we keep the rink there, I mean, we use it on a daily basis, literally sweep and snow blow it nearly every single day, either from shavings or from snow. And the Zamboni, like I said, if we don't have the building, it just makes sense to get rid of it. I mean, because we're not gonna haul that over there once or twice a week to surface it. Just thinking about hauling 2 pieces of equipment daily over there. And then you add a third one and that one's difficult to move. It's, I mean, even with a hydraulic ramp trailer, it still sits so low, like this far off the ground, that we have to block it to get it onto the trailer. So it's just not ideal, obviously. But, you know, one of the big things is, are we gonna continue providing ice rinks? Are we gonna, do we wanna try to continue offering a warming house? I mean, we know we have done it for the last 2 years without doing it. I put the budget in there just so you've seen what the budget is for the ice rinks. I mean, it's, you know, $6,000 budget for the season, but, you know, there is heat, there is electricity. Most of the expenses, the wages, there's over 4,000 in wages typically. So, yeah, our water, electricity, and natural gas is down at the bottom. There's a separate one for ice rinks. Is, you know, not a huge expense. There's just over $1,100, $1,700 for electric and natural gas, but that comes off of the main meter off of the shop too. So it's combined 2 buildings. So.
Comment? Okay, Mark?
If I can just butt in a little bit. So Sean, what other parks do we have buildings at?
As far as like this,
Yeah.
like shops, none.
So when we have to cut modular, we have to bring everything out there.
Yep.
So.
And it wasn't really talking mowers, because we move mowers around every day.
All the time? Okay.
All the time. I mean, so it wasn't necessarily about mowers, maybe one specific mower, like the one that's used at the pool.
Kennedy gets an awful lot of attention, a lot of participation. It's just packed. I mean, I'm actually pushing myself to go by it because I made a statement that I don't use the parks. And I mean, I'm crazy. And I'm like the only person that doesn't use the parks because Kennedy is, I mean, we're parking out there. There's tons of cars. There's tents everywhere. It's amazing. It actually puts a smile on my face. So so that's fine. So now go to the warming houses. So the 400 block in Wausau gets a lot of skating. They don't have a warming house.
They do.
They do?
Yep.
Is it a portable?
It's a portable.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Where is it? Where?
On the south end, right near the amphitheater.
Oh, there. Okay.
They have a prefab facility
That they put up.
It's got electricity and heat.
What kind of heat?
It's got electricity and heat in it. They do not necessarily have an attendant in all their facilities.
Okay.
But they do have somebody who comes and locks it up every day.
Okay.
Just because obviously you have a heated building with electricity in the winter. Somebody's gonna be using it all night long if it's left open. So, I mean, they have some expense in that, but they do run multiple shifts too. So.
That's it.
Any other comments? Did you want any kind of?
It's up to you if you want to take any action on anything. I just wanted to get it out there. That's why it's here so early in August, because we know that, we're planning on moving the end of September. Like I said, there are some viable options for maybe some other storage. Like I said, there's 70 hockey ring boards inside that warm house right now that we take in and out through a regular service door. If the shop is there, we can drive it in with a skid steer and drop it, a stack, instead of hand moving all those boards every spring and fall, which everybody loves that day.
Yeah.
Twice a month your hand.
When the new building is built, a lot of, just regardless of anything specific, a lot of stuff is gonna go over there. So there will be an increased amount of space in those buildings.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Okay.
seasonal stuff that we store right now. I mean, the Zambonis at Ryan Street, I mean, the snow blowers back here. It's gonna be nice. We have stuff in multiple sheds at Kennedy. So it's gonna be nice having a lot of the stuff in the same spot.
Okay.
But it's also, do we need to store 70 hockey ring boards at the new municipal center? I mean, it's just like I said, just getting that information out to you, just,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you, at this point, would want to get rid of, say, necessarily an area that, like I said, the hockey boards or, your seasonal stuff that you're using every day. Why would you want to have it over there when you've got a building you can store it in?
Well, like the Zamboni could be parked there year round.
Right.
We wouldn't have to move it again. And wouldn't have to go back out to Ryan Street because there'd be enough room in that facility for that. I mean, just like I said, things to think about. And if you have more questions or want to come and take a look at it, you've never been there, that's kind of why I gave you dimensions of the facilities, just so you had some idea of what was there and what it's being used for.
Are you saying you would store that in the park? That stuff would be in the park shop now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we wouldn't use the park shop as a shop anymore.
No.
So, because all of our equipment will be over here.
Right.
You know what I mean? Most of it. And we'll have a shop area to work on stuff there, and we won't
Kennedy
need
Hall then could possibly be rented out or leased.
to rent it out, or, we could lease the baseball. Like I said, there's options. I mean, that's why I gave you the rental information though. I mean, 10 rentals each year in 18 and 10 and 19 out of 365 days is available, and it was rented 10 times each year.
Yeah.
It's way underutilized, so is there a better use for it? Because there is expense. I mean, between us cleaning, stocking, repairs, after groups use it, we didn't break even renting it out at $100 per time. And if it's a nonprofit, it's free. So just, is there a better use for it? Is there other groups that might use it? Maybe they could jointly use it for board meetings, et cetera,
Well, that's what I was saying, is there other, it's kept for like your baseball teams, but there's other organizations that use that park right now.
Well, and there's other groups that rent facilities at Green Neck for their board meetings, or Weston Lanes, or, so like I said, there might be some other options out there.
I guess the one thing I'd add to that too is Sean had in his report, I believe that he sent out RFPs for the corp update. And part of that was also including a master plan for Kennedy Park. So, there may be some things that come out of that too that show what the best use of this area is, and that building's been moved once, maybe that building is in the wrong spot at the park, and maybe there's a better spot for it to be used, or maybe it makes more sense to have a maintenance shop over by the aquatic center instead of having stuff there. So I guess, there's maybe still some other pieces of the puzzle to fall in before we need to make a final decision.
Right. Like I said, for the corp update and for the master plan, we'll be bringing the stakeholders of the community together. And that'll be all these youth groups and everybody to discuss what should take place at Kennedy Park, but just overall in all of our parks, so.
Any questions or comments, or, I don't think you need any action on this, do you? Did you want something to acknowledge? Then the next would be park signage.
So this kind of started with an email from another committee member, but it also was stemmed from some of the projects that have been taking place in the village as far as the wayfinding signage project and then the entryway sign replacement project has both recently, the wayfinding happened in 2020. And then the entryway sign replacement project was approved earlier this year. So a lot of upgrades to the signs throughout the village and then, you know, the village park signs, as you could see, which I included pictures of. I included a picture of one of the old wooden ones that was built in the mid-2000s that are at most of the parks. Also some newer ones, so like that one was installed at Highway J, right there. That was quite recent. It's on a Dibond aluminum material. It's attached to two wooden posts. It costs us $290. It's 4x4. It looks really nice. I mean, for the price that you're paying, and we know signage is very expensive, especially if you look at the entryway plan or the, you know, some of those, but it's different material because you're talking a 1/4 inch highway grade sign. You can go down to 3/16, I believe, on those type 2 as far as the thickness. But these are 10-year warranty and as far as the protective covering, no different than the, you know, the wayfinding signs, etc. Relatively inexpensive. Both these signs, that one and the Jaeger Prairie sign, were about the same price. They were both done locally by D&L Signs. That one's actually 5 years old already. The Memorial one was like 2 years old. And then you have the current wooden signs built in 2005. The top Village of Weston logo is a few logos ago for us. And the top letters are actually built out of wood. It was built by a former employee that retired not that long ago. And the letters on the bottom are actually plastic letters that they bought and painted. So the signs have been repainted, repaired, post replaced a few times. But they've really seen the end of their life, basically, because you can see how the different layers are coming apart because it is wood that's glued and screwed together. And we've actually been talking it internally for a couple of years that, you know, the signage for the price that they're available for. I mean, we can do a new sign, a 4x4 like those other ones for $300, then a couple posts and an installation. I mean, we can slowly start upgrading them. We also have like the one that's mentioned in the email, which I don't have one included, but it's a Yellow Banks disc golf sign. It's a normal street sign, like the speed limit sign. It's like this big. It is two-sided, but if you're going 35 miles an hour, you're not gonna know what that brown sign with the little letters and the little yellow thing on it said. So that was brought up. Barb mentioned it too. She looked at it too, and she's like, yeah, if you didn't know it was there, you just drive past it. So that was another reason to bring this up and just start discussing that this is something that we should be thinking about. And we do have multiple different signs out there. So Mockmuller's got a concrete sign that was donated by Weston Tile in memory of Vilas. So that's why that one has a different type of sign. And then at Yellow Banks, we actually have one of our signs, and then we have one from when it was County Park yet. And then the Waterfowl Refuge has a carved out foam one that was painted. So we have some different signage out there. There's definitely, if we want some consistency, we need to go through an inventory and you know, make these signs a little more consistent if we want. Because if we're trying to match some of the wayfinding and other signage out there, you know, do we want everything that we have out there to look completely disjointed because everything's different? So it's really another one of those things where I wanted to get it out in front of everybody and see what your thoughts are on it. I mean, I don't want to spend any time on a park signage project if nobody wants us to do anything with them right now. So we know there's an expense. The wayfinding sign project, I think, was around 77,000, and the most recent one was, I think, in the 70 range too.
Yeah, entryway.
Entryway signage. So this shouldn't be that expensive, but it all depends on the choices made on signage and how many and all that. So
But yeah, I guess, not to upgrade is kind of, you look at some of these signs and you go, jeez.
And we know that, like some of our locations are more, I don't know if I should say it this way, but like tourist driven. I mean, we have at least three baseball tournaments. We have rugby games. We have stuff that drives people to Kennedy Park. Like Kennedy Park is a tourist destination to some extent. Some of our parks are not so much, like Sand Hill Meadows, you got a 2.5 acre park. It's for the neighborhood. You're not driving tourists to them, but would tourism funding work for the two signs at Kennedy Park? Just if we were looking for where to cover some expense,
Well, I think
if it's used.
this golf thing could get up.
Yeah, so there's certain parks that are definitely could be eligible for that, but there's others that are not. The dog park. Dog park's crazy busy and they're not all in Weston, that's for sure. So, that's probably one of the parks we get the calls on the most, is where's the dog park?
But the other thing is just sort of establishing a uniform appearance for all of these. That's, having, that logo is, I'm 51, that's a significantly older logo than what we use in the village now. So, I think creating a uniform appearance for all of our parks is something that we should investigate and plan for. That's a pretty sign.
As you can see there, that's got the current village logo on the top of it.
Yeah.
With the evergreen tree like that. I think the Jaeger Prairie sign has the old tree on it yet. So we've been through a couple of iterations of that one specifically, but that sign down there on the trail was the same as the wooden ones at the parks, and it just didn't hold up. First thing was we lost the leg, right? So I just wanted to see some of the stuff that was out there, and that one's down in the woods, quarter mile deep. So it's not like it stands out that it's different than everything else in the village. And then this one, we went with just the more rustic, like barnwood look, just due to what it was. And I know Daryl Will, actually, the family that donated property, was looking to do something else on his own out there, a little more significant too. So he had talked about it. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but that was part of the agreement when we got the land donated to us on what it was going to be called, et cetera, and the wording on the sign. So, but it's just something, if you think that's something we should work on, like inventorying the signs and getting a plan together on our own. And then, like I said, I don't want to spend time on it if it's not a realistic thing that we should be working on.
Pleasure.
I would support that. I would move that we do inventory the signs and move forward with a plan.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Inventory the signs, and I would say then maybe bring back to the committee to look at what you're.
Yeah, we'll get to inventory and see what we have. And even if we put out a request for proposals on the cost, then we have an idea for the CIP part,
Right.
CIP discussion about it. Like I said, I don't want to work on it
Right.
unless it's a goal of the committee or the village to do something with the signage. Because like I said, there's lots of these projects out there, so.
Yes, that there is. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay. Let's see here, is that the next page?
Yeah.
Okay, now next, and it's, I believe it's your.
Yes.
Agenda.
Street paving, Michael?
Yeah, I guess C and E maybe go together a little bit here on this list. We talked a little bit at the July meeting. I know there's a request to try to have a separate capital improvement plan discussion. I guess just looking for a little more maybe feedback before we schedule that here yet this fall. We talked last month about how some of the projects that were initially planned for 23 aren't aren't going to happen. You know, kind of had a pause on things as we were applying for different grants and looking at where those projects are going to be. You know, some of the joint projects we had, our partnering community, our municipality was, you know, essentially saying we'll do the project if we get money for it, but if we don't get money for it, it's going to be pushed off. So that's where the Ross Ave, Riverbend to Paul's project fell. You know, the Bladel Avenue one was kind of a consequence of PFAS, and kind of redirecting some of the focus on our wells. However, I think there's also an element of that works in well with the Kennedy Park kind of master plan too, as far as what that Alta Verde well looks like, you know, and how that factors in the future. So that project kind of is somewhat also contingent on the Kennedy Park layout moving forward. But then we did have a project like Northwestern Avenue where we did get funding sneak into 2023. But again, by removing you know, the Ross Ave and the Birch Street project and putting in Northwestern with a grant, you know, we essentially are going from about a $1.3 million in general fund expenses to a net of about $150,000, maybe $200,000 in general fund expenses. So kind of what we are expecting to spend versus what we are projected to be spending, you know, is it at least about $1 million difference, if not slightly more. So I guess one of the questions was, do we want to look at adding in some overlays and other repavings from 2024 and beyond into 23, and then plan for that bigger 2024 project, which you know, currently, you know, Fuller Street would be that bigger project in that year, kind of like Birch Street is this year, or we had Everest Avenue in that realm, or a 2023 project like Birch Street from Jelnick to Community Center Drive to kind of fill that gap as well. I guess before I get too much into this, I believe we sent this out earlier this year, but one part of this discussion is how our state transportation aids, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. Our state transportation aids, we get money from the state when we spend money on our roads. Our aids peaked back in 2011 at about just under $1.25 million. This past year, we received $555,000. So as we stopped spending on our streets, the state was giving us less money for our streets. We kind of hit this low point here in 2020, 2021, and we're starting to go back up. I guess that, you know, this can fluctuate greatly over the years, and you know, we try not to be heavily reliant on that. And that was one of the discussions with the board and the finance committee at the time, was we trying to figure out what that sustainable level is, so that we're not on this roller coaster as we move forward in time. So I guess that's, for those of you maybe wondering, why is he bringing this up? It sounds good that we're not spending money. There is a part of trying to keep a steady flow coming in so that we can figure out where we're at on this curve, because, you know, these funds do get used in our operating budget, or they can be used strictly for capital funding. But it all plays a role in how we look at that future financial analysis for our streets, you know. So we're, you know, this year about $700,000 less than we got in 12 years ago. So that's a significant amount of cash to try to make up for, which we were able to do through the years. But I guess as we start seeing this trend moving up, we want to, you know, try to figure out where that plateau is and try to keep us at that plateau.
Okay, any questions? Well,
Yeah.
that's you.
Yeah. So I guess that's where, you know, again, don't necessarily be an answer, but, I guess we have some thoughts on where, we maybe move some projects around. Like the Ross Avenue joint project up on the northeast side of the town. I guess there, we just keep applying for grants with the town on that, and eventually we should get funding for it. But then some of our repaving projects, we talk about like, Shorey Avenue here, or overlaying, what's referred to as the Crane Meadows subdivision, or Sand Hill Meadows. I think it's Crane Meadows here.
Sand Hill Meadow Park.
Yeah,
It doesn't make sense.
but, those were, it's purple and orange. So purple is 2024 and orange was 2025. So I mean, those are two that, a 2024 and a 2025 project that we could do in 2023 without, there's not really a lot of engineering and design work that has to go into those types of projects. So it's not gonna fill that void completely, but it might, I believe that's about $300,000 worth of work that, kind of bumps that spending back up a little bit. So like I said, I believe the thought was at the last meeting that was something you were willing to entertain, but we're running up against the gun on that discussion, so.
Well, I think if you want to start spending, you need to spend some money, and these are ones, like I said, you don't have to do a lot of design work. I would think you want to get it done and do it, because they're already on the CIP plan.
Sure.
And it isn't like it's something you're doing because you want to spend money. It's something that needs to be done.
Right, it's it's already scheduled to go, it's just.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I guess I have three small questions. One is pretty easy. I'm assuming at Nick Avenue, basically with everything that's been happening in Crownwater, there hasn't been any conversations about all the questions we had about that.
Yeah, we're actually, is that Wednesday this week?
1 o'clock Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll be meeting with their new public works director and their interim administrator.
Okay. It's probably been 2 months since I drove down there, but Anastasia, off of Shorey, I noticed that road, it drove weird. I don't know if it was in the spring that it was, I don't know if anybody gets down there, but
Sure.
I happened to notice, I was just driving down there looking at some houses and it seemed a little off. And then I know it came up in our conversation about Apache, but North Apache, the part that didn't get touched, is in really bad shape.
We've got to wedge some of that there. I know where you're talking, where that dip is and stuff.
Yeah, just because there was basically that section that wasn't constructed because it already had.
Yeah, so the plan for that one would be to overlay it and kind of wedge it and then overlay it so it matches in.
It's got one real bad spot there on the south side that we can fix that up before, make it last through.
Okay.
I just got a curiosity question.
Sure.
On Weston Avenue, where we put in sewer and water, where you're getting, that road is absolutely terrible. But where we didn't do anything, it's good. What, I mean, when you're heading, that direction. Whatever that is.
So between Von Kennel and Ryan Street, if you remember, we repaved that road in 2011, 2012, because it was in very poor shape. So we ended up pulverizing and repaving that stretch from Von Kennel to Ryan. So, I mean, that road's only 10 years old, whereas the stretch from X to Von Kennel is probably close to 20 years old now. Oh.
I mean, because I'm going, well, my gosh, they put sewer and water in here and it's in worse shape. I mean, it should be a fairly newer road and yet,
Yeah.
Okay, because every time I go down that way, it's like, what the heck?
I think part of the reason, I would say part of the reason it's been delayed, maybe a big part of it is uncertainty about what was gonna happen and when
Yeah,
with the old Camp Phillips Center
right.
idea, so now we're switched, our focus is getting Weston Avenue reconstructed now
Right.
as our main project.
Well, I just always kind of going, well, how come this section here is in such poor shape and then you go farther down and it's, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then if you go from Ryan east, I believe that was last repaved in 96, and all the, you're starting to see the rutting in the wheel tracks, some of that popping, potholing. So, that's only gonna keep accelerating and getting worse too, but hopefully that'll be addressed in the next year.
Thank you. I just,
Yeah.
like I said, every time I go down there,
And then I guess, my only follow-up question here then too is, talking about a full street reconstruction, we probably should be getting a request for proposals out for design services, for that project or projects that we maybe want to look at in 2024. So we have a full design year in 2023. Like I said, Fuller Street, right in here is one of the projects that was identified initially. We got Birch Street over here, just north of Community Center Drive to Jelnik. Everest Avenue over here in between the junior high and high school primarily. There's some water utility upgrades to do with that besides just the street. East Jelnik, every time I drive down that, it seems like it's in worse shape than it was the day before. So I guess those are kind of four of the projects that I personally would see. I don't know if any of you guys have any feedback on streets out there that, you think should be maybe moved up the list, or you'd say is kind of your number one priority outside of, Weston Avenue. I guess that's the other part, is looking at what is that next kind of local road project that we take on.
I think Fuller is a definite project because it has a lot of traffic.
Yep.
And then when at the intersection of the Schofield Avenue, it's difficult to look at. To the west, you don't see enough because you're at the angle sitting in there.
Yep.
So I think that's a must project.
I think it's a lot of pedestrian. I live right off Tricia, and there's people walking all over the place, and there's no sidewalk on, any of those streets. And there are a lot of them going down to the dog park and down to Mountain Bay Trail, a lot of bike traffic, so I would agree with that.
Okay.
I would also, I just think from a pedestrian standpoint.
Yeah.
And it's probably when I think about the pedestrian traffic, I think that stretch probably is more than almost any other one out there, right?
Yeah.
And if we're gonna move that, I'm sorry, if you're finished. If we're gonna move that intersection there at the Fuller, we better start negotiating with the Aeropar.
Yep.
Because it's gonna take a while, I think, to convince them. And I would suggest we probably give them the road, and then they give us the parking.
Yeah, try to swap something.
Mm-hmm. And if it's gonna take a couple dollars extra, I think we should do it, so.
I was just gonna say, aren't you gonna kind of push the bar off?
Well, you end up coming in between like Weston Lanes and Arrow. So then you try to line it up with Old Costa Lane. You try to create a nice four-way intersection instead of the offset kind of tees there.
How did that end up that way?
I don't know.
In the town.
It might have been, yeah, I mean, who owned the land at the time, or?
Yeah.
Railroad.
Yeah, I mean, it crosses the railroad right in here.
Because there probably wasn't.
I guess it doesn't matter, I just
Yeah.
was curious as to. how
It's
it worked.
the sidewalk engineering, that's how it is to it. Just run it there, it's gonna be just good, that's it.
Yeah.
They will do it. Anyhow. Anybody else, any other question? All right. What are utility projects?
Yeah, I guess, so again, we had some of those identified. So our big ones right now, I guess, is kind of the main priority is the PFAS treatment for wells 3 and 4, which would also include iron and manganese removal for well 3. So it maybe bumps the iron and manganese at wells 1 and 5 a little bit. but it does get, iron out of, well 3, which is actually our highest, level of iron was at well 3. So it is a project that we would, improve water quality with, while, I guess updating or trying to meet the, emerging, contaminant, requirements for PFAS. So then, and then, as we mentioned with the Kennedy Park, the lading project then is this Bladel and Alta Verde project, where we'd figure out what the future of the Alta Verde well house holds, how that maybe fits in with that park. We could look at doing a very small, structure around it and just have that pumping, then over to Bladel, or then the larger treatment facility would be located. And then as part of this, Weston Avenue corridor project, with the village of Rothschild. And that includes a new looping water main, which then would allow us or better position us to install a new water tower over by the hospital. And then we would end up decommissioning the Summit Water Tower that's currently in the village of Rothschild, kind of just northwest of the Alderson-Weston Avenue intersection. So that water tower site on Weston Avenue was purchased, I don't know,
Probably 20 or 2000, 2011, somewhere in there, I'm guessing. Parking Connect, maybe it was even earlier than that. I'll look back.
yeah, so that site's been sitting there waiting for a water tower since before the hospital, I believe, was even there, so. So I guess as we go through our water master study and taking care of water quality and water capacity, that's kind of the main route is, getting wells 3 and 4 treated and back online, getting the additional storage capacity, and then getting wells 1 and 5 addressed as well. And then at, in about a year's time, or hopefully a little less than a year, wells 7 and 8, the new wells over by Yellow Banks, should be completed up here. So by getting those 2 up and running, the initial water quality pumping showed that those were of very high quality, similar to well 6, which is up here, which was our 0 PFAS detected well. So we should be continuing to improve the water delivered to our utility customers. And I guess along the way, the sanitary sewer, lining, those projects are a little, more minor. But we'll be taking care of infiltration, inflow issues as we see them too. I know that was a question as far as what does that sequence for water projects look like, and I guess just trying to maintain the capacity as well as treat what we have. Seems to make sense to go with wells 3 and 4 right now, and then get 1 and 5 after those are 3 and 4 is up and running again.
All right. Any other question for Michael? All right, thank you, Michael.
Yep.
Future item next we don't have any future items. Item 15, next meeting dates. Monday, September 12, 2022 at 4:15. That's a regular meeting. And also Monday, October 10th, 2022 at 4:15. That's the regular meeting.
Correct, yep. Yeah, so I guess moving forward, we're figuring there'll be joint meetings unless Sean or I just have nothing from one side as far as any agenda items.
We will have we should have the review of the proposals for the court and the master plans for the September meeting.
Okay.
Deadlines, yeah, the deadline is 31st of August, so we should have proposals by then.
Okay, item 16, topic for future meeting, talk about that. Remark from Administrator, Mr. Donner.
I think Director Wadowski mentioned our move to the new facility is supposed to be taking place during the week of the 26th of September, as far as the furniture move and getting staff over there. So we've got a lot to get done before then. Feels like, it doesn't feel real, I guess, right now, but it's gonna be real very quickly, I guess. We also have the bids advertised for the public safety building changes on the exterior. That bid opening is supposed to be taking place on the 30th of this month, I believe. And also, we have determined to work with a company by the name of Rapp Consulting, Craig Rapp Consulting, strategic planning effort for the village. So I'm putting things together to get out to the board. And then other members of committees, commissions that may be interested in participating in focus groups. We're gonna get that out to citizens as well. So we're gonna try to get a cross section of people that would be interested in that. So a lot of things happening.
Anything else?
Nothing else?
Any question from Mr. Donner?
When is the meeting transitioning then? Is that the October meeting?
As far as when we
Location?
meet at the next place or at the new place, I would expect we would do that. We would have our meetings in October taking place over there, yes.
Give myself more time to get here. Down the road.
All right, item 18, remark from staff.
I've got nothing further.
Nothing for me.
Got nothing?
I do. Kafka Land Clearing Services came out to Ryan Street Recycling last week. They ground all the brush. The last time they ground brush for us was like 9 months ago. So we had a pretty good stockpile. They did start charging now. They never did in the past for grinding and hauling. They took it to the biomass. They charged us a fee of $1,500. It came up to almost 3,400 cubic yards of ground brush, which comes up to about a little over 40 cents a yard, which I still think is fairly reasonable because I don't know what we do with all this. But the reason I'm bringing this up is, once again, I would really like to recognize Everest Metro Police Department. We put up a trail cam there and we've been monitoring it. And I've been sending them pictures and they've been giving out fines, and it was amazing. I pulled the chip this morning and ran through it from the weekend, and it's like the amount of contractors that were dumping junk in there, meaning stumps and everything else, has dwindled. I shouldn't even talk about it, but it was great looking at it. And you can see them coming through on a regular basis or showing up on the camera. So I would like to thank them, because it's been a thorn in our side for a while, and it seems like it's getting things under control for us. The city of Wausau they pay people to be there for that. So by them helping us out, number one, we don't have to haul the stumps away. Tito Bobbles are not taking stumps anymore because they just got sick of it too. They've got to go haul them away, and and we don't want them. So this has really been helpful. So when you see those guys from Everest Metro, give them a pat on the back. It's been really good for us. So it's a good thing.
Do you know who they ticketed? What community?
Dan mentioned, while he texted, who'd you text?
Earlier today
No, just during the meeting.
Griesbach, Jim Griesbach, because I had been talking with him around 4:00. I had a question for their finance person at the county. So I texted him about County Highway X. I said, our village president is taking a
He's
lot of
whining.
heat.
I saw the email, it said whining.
So he texted back a thumbs up, so the big guy respects you.
Good job,
So,
thank you.
But yeah, Everest Metro, I just can't thank him enough. It's really helped us out a lot. It's saving us from having to deal with a lot of stuff that takes us away from doing other things, so.
Who's ticketed? Other community?
I won't give, no, they were contractors. One was in Rothschild, one lives on County Highway J down in the town of Reed. Yeah. You can tell it because they pull in with a dump trailer behind a pickup truck and they're wearing bright yellow shirts. One was a local contractor who I don't believe lives in Weston, but he's all over Facebook advertising. These guys got pinched. So, it's been good. So hopefully it keeps going that way.
Thank you. Anybody question? Remark from committee member? Phillips? Tom? Nope.
In
Yeah.
park.
Nope. Todd?
The only thing I would have is there a way to kind of highlight what's going to be parks on the
Sure.
agenda?
Sure.
So I'm not sitting there and going, okay, you know,
So you could.
as you know, if I get control of the meeting, forget it. But no, that, it would just be kind of nice,
Or we could just break it into two sections,
you know,
right?
yeah, you could do that too, yeah. Either way, I mean, just so we kind of know, well, okay, this is gonna be a park item, not a,
Well, you could just do green for parks and yellow for everything else. Usually
I
on
think,
Saturday night.
yeah, I also think the goal is for all of us to discuss both items though too. I mean, we've kind of been separating it, but the idea of us all being together, both committees, is
right,
information on both items.
Yeah, it's kind of public infrastructure, right? Like our facilities, whether they're park or well houses or, you know, streets. I mean, it's kind of the, you know, like the ATV, UTV. I mean, you know, Public Works was taking that on, but, you know, other communities, that's a park and rec item that's
right, well, even the
discussed.
bike path.
And, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I understand, but it would just be kind of, you know, to
Yep.
be able to look around and say, okay, I'm not taking over, you know,
sure.
or ignoring what was parked, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I have one item, I think, Michael, on that last minute of the meeting, item 10, line 7, that should be DOT, not DNR.
Yeah, you're correct.
All right,
That one. Okay.
item 20, I don't have any announcement, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I have it, thank you, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
You all.